Well, what a day. What a defiant day. Gave me a lot of heart. And you need to see something. I need to show you, let you hear people I met outside St Mary's Cathedral this afternoon after the funeral mass for Cardinal George Pell. Because it is time their voices were heard too. You see, millions of Australians listening to the national broadcast, for example, or watching many TV reports, would never guess this, but Cardinal Pell was actually much loved. And those Australians who foolishly still trust the ABC to tell the truth would never understand the real grief of the thousands of people at St Mary's today. They would not understand why people there so mourned the loss of this giant of a priest who rose to become the third most powerful man in the Vatican. And it's not just the ABC that gives this false picture, that doesn't talk to the kind of Australians I talk to today. So much media coverage would have you think that these people grieving today for Pell, thousands inside, thousands outside watching on TV screens, they must be evil or ignorant or cruel or something. They've got to be tribal Catholics, you know, putting their church above the suffering of broken people, just like Pell did, putting the victims behind, you know, their concern to preserve their church, victims of this pedophile priest, or at least as the ABC claims, this protector of pedophiles, George Pell. They're still saying that. Louise Milligan's still saying that. Well, you know, there's something weird here, really weird here. I wish you'd been there to see it with me. Can they really, truly think something so preposterous, really, about, say, you know, former Prime Minister John Howard? He was there. Do they seriously think that he would celebrate the life of a pedophile? Or former Prime Minister Tony Abbott, also there. Would he be that depraved? Opposition leader Peter Dutton, he was there. Would he really risk the damage to his vote by publicly paying tribute today to a man that he thought had preyed on children or protected wicked priests who had? I mean, that is nuts, isn't it? And this idea that the family and friends of George Pell were also there, the people that Pell had helped in his life, the nuns and priests who knew him and were there, scores of them, the Archbishop, would they really forgive a man who'd betrayed one of the most wonderful appeals of their Christ, protector of the weak and lowly? Let the children come to me.
God grant an eternal reward to this man of an idea, who loved his Lord and served his church shamelessly, vehemently, courageously, to the end.
No, it is not from ignorance or evil or blindness or dumb loyalty that all these people were there. Me too, I was there. I'm no Christian, yet I still felt I had to show up. And, you know, I wasn't that close to Pell. I met him before I started to defend him from the vicious attacks from the media that seemed absolutely determined to use any stick to smash this man. I'd met him only 3 times. Or 4 times, but they were determined to smash a guy who was conservative, who was against gay marriage, who spoke against abortion, who was even, oh my goodness, blasphemy, a global warming skeptic. And always, and this is very crucial, he was always a fearless preacher of his Christian faith, and that will not stand, not in today's media world. Now, George Pell's motto, he chose it himself, was "Be not afraid." I launched a book of his on that very theme. And this man, this son of a Ballarat publican, boxing champion, I can tell you he was the most fearless man I have ever known. He stood up in the most vicious fights. He wasn't the vicious one. Against all odds, taking the hits from the enemies of his faith, to speak the truth as he found it. He'd debate even the world's most famous atheist in front of a hostile ABC audience with a smirking ABC host, and he'd do it all with dignity and class. And this above all in his mind, to bring people closer to the Christ he believed would bring them joy and everlasting life. But this George Pell, I have heard nothing about that man when listening to the ABC radio reports this morning. drove him to the airport. Or, I have to admit, in some of our own reports yesterday. Every single radio bulletin this morning instead started with a mention of the protests against Pell, as if the hatred of George Pell was today's story again, and not the love I saw in the cathedral. And the same with news stories coming out during the day, as if the hatred of 100 screaming protesters outside the cathedral was just as important, even more important, than the love of the thousands of mourners inside. But those mourners I saw, they weren't at all what you might really feel forced to think, if you believe the media. They weren't callous to the suffering of victims of pedophile priests. Here's Cardinal George Pell's own brother David today.
As an immediate family, we too have suffered by the processes that has happened over the last 7 or 8 years. We felt so sorry for George because we could not help him. We knew that it was not true.
They were also, that family were also affected by pedophile priests. They have sympathy for pedophile priests, but they know George Pell is innocent. I know it. David Pell knows it. The Archbishop knows it. People who spoke there know it. Tony Abbott knows it. We in that cathedral do not believe the smears thrown at Pell for so long by the media, and especially the ABC.
We implore you to rid yourselves of the woke algorithm of mistruths, half-truths and outright lies that are being perpetrated. Do your research.
And Sydney Archbishop Anthony Fisher, who's Pell's successor in Sydney, said it for the mourners when he described Cardinal Pell today as a scapegoat, a victim of a great injustice by an anti-Catholic media. There was even a reading from the Bible on exactly that. And it wasn't just the media who did it, you know. Tony Abbott, he was right in saying exactly that. He pointed out, don't forget Victoria Police and some judges.
He was made a scapegoat for the Church itself. He should never have been investigated in the absence of a complaint. He should never have been charged in the absence of corroborating evidence, and he should never have been convicted in the absence of a plausible case, as the High Court so resoundingly made plain. But had he died in jail, without the High Court's vindication, this today would have been a very different event, even though his innocence would have been no less had it been known only to God.
Now, we had to cut out all the applause of Tony Abbott's remarks there. That clip would have gone on for another minute. Because the anger in that cathedral, at the media, at the witch hunt, well, and particularly the ABC, it was so strong that the ABC, by the way, was even refused a seat with the other media. Why should the enemy be allowed inside the cathedral? And I don't blame them. In fact, I've spent so long tracking down all the standard claims against Pell because, you know, of course I don't want to shame myself by defending evil. I had to check. But I have found and demonstrated on this show and in print in my columns that none of the evidence against him stacked up. He was the victim of a witch hunt by people who put their hatreds and their resentments, and yes, sometimes their genuine hurts as well, above the facts, above the truth. And that is, of course, why the High Court freed Pell from jail unanimously, 7 judges to 1, as the victim of one of the worst miscarriages of justice ever seen in this country. I correct myself, the worst miscarriage of justice. So it's no wonder that the mourners outside the cathedral, thinking this, that Pell was a victim of the most savage anti-Christian, anti-Catholic pogrom ever run by our media, got so upset. I mean, look, in every ABC radio report, again, there's protests about Pell. Yeah, oh, the protests, that was their story. Every person they interviewed was a protester who hated Pell, every single one. And most reports sounded like a promotion for the protest today near the Cathedral. Look, almost like an incitement to come and tie ribbons of protests on the Cathedral itself or some other Catholic church. Take your pick. And when the protesters today did turn up, I got it. Some of the crowd of mourners outside had had enough, and they formed a wall to stop them from disrupting the mourning. So I get that too. And you know what struck me was the absolute hypocrisy here about this protest that was promoted by the media. It was by a group called the Community Action for Rainbow Rights. When you check, it's actually run by Marxists, Socialist Alliance people like April Holcomb, a transgender Marxist LGBTQ activist. And I really got to ask, you know, promoting these people, giving them a platform on every single radio, TV, or whatever, on the ABC and elsewhere, how does that work? Why are Marxists getting airtime to preach about the wickedness of Christianity, and Pell in particular? Marxism, I mean, you want evil, there it is. This is the movement in whose name 100 million people were slaughtered last century in Russia and in China and Cambodia and Cuba. And the ABC now says, hey, let's hear from the Marxists. Let's let the Marxists dominate our news reports to attack the Catholic Church. I mean, seriously? The church that actually heroically fought Marxism, knowing it was a tyranny and an enemy of mankind that treated people like trash. And meanwhile, of course, other media outlets chortled over the barbarity of other Pell haters, like the Chaser yesterday, formerly ABC Stars, trying to barge into a church service for Pell, shouting that he was a guilty man. That was yesterday. Have these people no shame? Have they no decency? Well, no, they don't. They don't. And all we can do is be grateful that we have still had men like George Pell who try to counter this wave of barbarity that threatens to overwhelm us. Men like George Pell who still have the courage to stand up for their values, unlike New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrottet, who's himself a victim this week of a foul ABC attack on his Catholic faith. And yet, this man thought it politically safer to stay away from this funeral. Shame on him, as did the Prime Minister, despite being raised the Catholic. Raised the Catholic, which means raised to fight injustice and stand with the unfairly accused, even as a mob bays for blood. But enough of the haters. In fact, the mourners today talked far more about Pell's love and his charity and his creation of institutes of learning, his modesty, the help that he gave Aborigines as well. Someone who performed the smoking ceremony in the past for Pell, paid tribute to him for that. And above all, they talked about his courage in being a martyr for his faith. And I think that's inspiring. That's inspiring, and it's inspiring others. And I mean that literally. This year, the Sydney Church has had more trainee young priests than in nearly 40 years. But like I said, it is time you heard the voices that the media, the ABC, has been ignoring, because today there were more people inside at St Mary's mourning George Pell than there were outside hating him. And isn't it time you heard from them to learn of a George Pell the ABC would never let you see?
Cardinal Pell was a wonderful person, so misunderstood. I can't understand why people don't actually listen to the obvious truth about his great personality and his wonderful contribution and his honesty and his sincerity. Right. I mean, he's just such a beautiful person.
Nathaniel Smith, you're a government whip. You're here. Why are you here?
I've been a friend of George Pell's for over 2 decades. Since he became the Archbishop of Sydney, then the Cardinal, I went on 2 World Youth Days with him, and I was a delegate to the Cross and Icon handover in Rome in 2008. So I've known him for a very long time.
A good man?
A great man.
Misunderstood, though, apparently.
Well, some great people are misunderstood. He was a man of a deep faith, of deep intellect, and great wit.
But why isn't the Premier here? He's a Catholic, been under such attack for his faith. What, he didn't dare come?
Well, that's the question you have to ask the Premier. I know there's a lot of scheduling at the moment, but I'm here today, and there's other members of the government here today, and there's a member of the opposition here today. So,
well, good on you. Good on you. Got to stand up, people, for our beliefs.
And there's federal members here as well. So
I noticed that.
Pell is a family friend, and my brother is also a priest. He's the eldest, and he was under Cardinal Pell in the seminary of the Good Shepherd.
And what sort of man was he? I mean, the image that like some of the protesters have, the ABC has, is him as a monster, cold, unfeeling.
It's totally erroneous, totally the opposite. It's a pack of lies.
I think it's very clear, just by his life, that he wasn't what the media said he was, and I'm just here to pray for his soul that he gets to heaven, and we're here to celebrate his life.
Greg, you're on the board of the Parade schools. They're linked to Opus Dei. The ABC threw a lot of mud at them this week. The ABC also threw a lot of mud at George Pell. But why are you here today?
Well, I'm here today, I think, to honour that man who stood up for his faith. I mean, it was a very powerful service, and I enjoyed it immensely. It's a little bit hot out here, and we had to endure a few things, but at the same time...
The protesters, you mean?
Yeah, the protesters, but they weren't, they held their distance, and, they weren't as bad as I thought it was going to be. They were... they tried to make...
Thanks to the New South Wales Police.
Well, thank you very much, New South Wales Police, yeah. But at the same time, you've got to let people speak and have their choice and what they're going to want to say. As far as the ABC is concerned, we've endured the criticism, we're taking it on board, we've been investigated, and, we're confident that we'll pass those investigations. We're doing the work now, and we'll be submitting it soon.
As a man, what did you think?
Very funny. Always great humour from him, but always straight down the line as well. So he never mixed his words with us, but he was always such great advice and such encouraging words to the youth that we're not alone. We can do it, and there's nothing that God can't do with, we can't do any. There's nothing we can't do without God behind us.
Lyle Shelton, thank you for joining us. So why are you here?
I'm here to honour a man who showed enormous courage, faith in Jesus Christ, who he believed in, and has been an inspiration, and someone who spoke the truth in our nation. And I just appreciate that so much. He's been an inspiration to my life, and I thought it was the least I could do to come and honour his memory.
Yes, I thought the way that the people inside, a few thousand people, they were applauding the coffin as it went past. I thought there was so much feeling for the man.
Absolutely. I think we can all see a great injustice has been done. No one wants to make light of sins of the past that have occurred, not just in the Catholic Church, but right across institutions and other churches. No one wants to cover that up. But this is a man who was vilified unjustly and was exonerated, and yet still people try to smear his name.
I have fond memories of him, and I thank him so much for his courage and leadership and his holiness, really.
And the Cardinal's been such a great inspiration to myself personally.
And yeah. The strength.
Yeah, the strength, the courage, and getting through such trial and adversity through prayer and faith in God and in our Lord, and through our Blessed Mother. It's been such an inspiration to myself. So I'm here to celebrate his life, to mourn his death, of course.
You are studying to be a journalist. Why are you here when so many of our professions say, well, this is a terrible man?
Well, growing up as a Catholic, I've gotten quite used to going against the popular.
Journalists don't do that, mate.
Yeah.
They swim with the tide.
Yeah, no. I've one of my goals is to be like you in your courage and your bravery, and stick to the truth no matter where society and all the other journalists are telling us to go. So
now, confirm that I did not ask you to say that.
No, definitely did not. No.
Those are just some of the many people I talked to here today, giving you a different view of Cardinal George Pell, someone that the media has portrayed as a monster, that even today portrays as someone who was cold and heartless. And I think you will see that a lot of people who knew him were inspired by him and see a completely different person. And I think, in fairness, we need to show that side of this man on TV as well, and let you decide whether he is the kind of person the ABC described, or as the people in there thought, someone close to a saint.